शांति शांति शांति। ओम नमो ब्रह्मादिभ्यो ब्रह्म विद्या संप्रदाय कर्तृभ्यो वंश ऋषिभ्यो महद्भ्यो नमो गुरुभ्यः। सर्वोपप्लवरहितः प्रज्ञानघनः प्रत्यगर्थो ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि ब्रह्मैवाहमस्मि। वेदान्तार्थविभासकाय गुरवे शान्ताय सन्न्यासिने नानावादी नगेन्द्रसङ्घपवये योगीन्द्रवन्द्याय च मोहध्वान्तदिवाकराय भगवत्पादाभिधाम्बिभ्रते तस्मै भाष्यकृते नमोऽस्तु सततं पूर्णाय बोधात्मने। ब्रह्माहं यत्प्रसादेन मयि विश्वं प्रकल्पितं श्रीमत्स्वयं प्रकाशाख्यं प्रणौमि जगतां गुरुं। यः परमात्मा जगत्सृष्ट्वा प्रविवेश पुनः स्वयं तं कृष्णं प्रत्यगात्मानं वन्दे गोपी मनोहरम्। यस्य प्रसादादहमद्वयात्मा विश्वं समस्तं मयि कल्पितं च तं सर्वलोकैकगुरुं सदाश्री स्वयं प्रकाशं गुरुमानतोऽस्मि। गुरूणां चरणाम्भोजं प्रणिपत्य निरन्तरं तत्कृपालेशतो द्वैत चिन्ताकौस्तुभमारभेयु। Now a very nice topic, and particularly pertaining to the upasana, meaning the meditation followed by the seeker, is being discussed. Actually, though the topic was only about Eka Eva Paramatma, this Paramatma is one. The conditionings may vary, but the variation in the conditioning, though may bring about a variation even in the conditioned expression. And keep in mind the example of the stained glass and the sunlight filtering through it. So the sunlight is clean and clear, but when it filters through the red stained glass, let us say, it becomes red light. So the conditioned expression of the light is red, right? Light by itself, the sunlight by itself is not red. It is just pure light. But the conditioned expression would change. Now let us say, if the conditioning is removed, would the conditioned expression also be the same? Or would the light still in that case appear red on the floor where it was falling before? No. So this is one point. So we have understood a relationship between the conditioning, the condition, and the conditioned expression. When the conditioning is absent, would you still call the sunlight as the conditioned light? No. It was called as conditioned only with reference to the conditioning in between. Obviously, if there is a conditioning, the conditioned expression is different. But the light, original light, which is getting conditioned, it need not be even called as the conditioned one. Okay, get it? Similarly, now take one more step further. Let us say the stained glass, which is there, has got very light red color in it, very light. Then, in the same glass, if one more layer of the light red color is added on that earlier existing stained glass, so of course now the conditioning has become a little denser than before. Then yet another layer of a paint, of the stained paint, is added to that glass. What would happen? So we are going to say the conditioning still has become denser than the earlier two conditionings. Similarly, in our case, we can understand that consciousness with the conditioning of total causality is the first condition. And in this total causality, everything is just absent, appears to be absent because it is unmanifest. Absent in the sense unmanifest. Unmanifest. Now, this total causality, by the very virtue that it is the cause, projects further the total subtlety. Okay, so now the conditioning has become denser than the earlier one. So we have the total causality plus the total subtlety. And remember, what do we mean by subtle? Okay, let that not be, need not be repeated every time. The student has to be alert and has to retain. That is the reason why in that place, what do they call it? The Viveka Chudamani, it is said that the student should be Medhavi. Medhavi meaning the student should have, his intelligence should have the quality of Medha. What is Medha? Medha means Granthartha Avadharana Shakti. What is Medha? Granthartha Avadharana Shakti. Something is taught or something is understood. Then whatever is understood also needs to be retained. not drained. The intelligence should be able to retain it. This is what happens as a problem with most of us, and that is that we understand something, but after a little while, it goes drains away as if leaving us as if we have never heard or understood that concept before. Whatever is retained also needs to surface when it is required. So what is Medha? Granthartha Avadharana Shakti. That one should be able to not only conclude what is being written or spoken, but needs to retain it and bring it to surface when it is required. Our brain is or our intelligence is equipped to be several thousand times faster than any supercomputer. And each one is endowed with that capacity. So this capacity to retain, so there are two capacities, let us say, the capacity to understand, the capacity to retain and surface it when it is required. So the first is called as prajna. Marathi people will call it pradnya. In Hindi bhasha, they will say pragya. The correct pronunciation is not nya, gya, j, j plus the anunasik. Yeah. So prajna. Well, this comes as new information to people who are so entrenched in, their local mother tongue that we find it difficult when new pronunciations are introduced. New in the sense, the right pronunciations. Generally, we have that kind of a bias to simply take what we have been taught or what we have been doing for years together as correct, and that does not matter. Prajna. The other capacity is called as medha, and both are required. Both of these capacities are required. So what happens now? In our case, why did I bring up this topic? Is because when we are thus studying, for example, when we were talking about total subtlety. Now, what do we mean by subtlety and what would be the meaning of total subtlety? Already should be there available with us. And when it is spoken, or you hear the word total subtlety, immediately the whole bulk should become available to you immediately. Generally, what happens is this prajna and medha get obstructed due to our purvakrit papas. The papa is a very horrible thing because of this purvakrit papa. That's why there are upasanas also, specific ones, like There is a mantra of Bhagavan Dakshinamurti, Shankar Bhagavan. Om Namo Bhagavate Dakshinamurtaye Mahyam Medham Prajnam Prayacha Svaha. This is the mantra. Its anushtan needs to be done so that the path is cleared, the Medha Prajna is not obstructed by our earlier misdeeds. Here, now, come to our topic of the day. So, when we have this conditioning, which is total causality, now the light of consciousness filtering through this total causality, we are going to say is Ishvara. The consciousness filtering through the same conditioning which has become more dense than before, because now it has manifested to total subtlety. Now the name of this conditioned consciousness is Hiranyagarbha. Consciousness is consciousness, untouched by the conditioning, unaffected by the conditioning. The conditioned expression differs. Then the conditioning still further froths into total gross. Now this total physical world comes into existence with all names and forms, with their attributes, karma, etc., everything. Here it is. Now this is the world, total world, and therefore the same light of consciousness now filtering through all the three layers of conditionings will be called as Vaishvanara. Pay attention to the fact that the light of consciousness is untouched, unaffected by any conditioning that may be there. Yet, it is the same Paramatma who is called as Vaishvanara, Hiranyagarbha, and Ishvara. The individuality is nowhere having any independent existence other than the totality. Now, if this fact is very well understood, then that what is expressing through the individual also is the Shuddha, is this pure consciousness. So now, what does the seeker is told to meditate upon this consciousness. Now, for him, immediately, if the physical world is there with the physical body that he sees, now he meditates that Aham Vaishvanara, I am Vaishvanara. As he is meditating, now the physical world becomes insignificant, and it is the only subtle, total subtlety which is there. Now, Aham Hiranyagarbha, that is what he discovers himself to be. And as he is thus doing that meditation, even all this total subtlety also vanishes, and what remains is this total causality unmanifest. Aham Ishvara. That is there. This is the upasana. The question which was raised, because some people yesterday said that they were not able to hear this part due to bad reception or internet connectivity. Here, a little synopsis of that part. Now, this meditation has to become intense, and depending upon the intensity of the meditation, one will be able to discover his oneness with Ishvara, Hiranyagarbha, or Vaishvana, that is there. So one discovers himself to be Vaishvanara, Hiranyagarbha, or Ishvara. When would this happen? When there is Bhavanotkarsha. Utkarsha meaning that the intensity of that meditation, that feeling, now has reached its boiling point. Like when you have a pot of water on the fire, the water becomes hot. Yet the hot water will not be called as boiling water. When, at what point can you say the water is boiling? Only when the temperature of the water is 100 degrees. And at that 100 degree of Celsius, the water from liquid form becomes steam, vapor. Water may be boiling, water may be hot even at 99.9 degrees, yet it is not steam. When can it be called, when does it become steam? Only at 100 degrees. So also, what is Utkarsha of this meditation? That Bhavana Utkarsha means where now undoubtfully, without any trace of doubt or any other thing, when one discovers Aham Ishvara, I am that Ishvara, I am Hiranyagarbha, I am Vaishvanara, not that I am such and such a person meditating that I am Hiranyagarbha or I am Vaishvanara. Not like that. I am Ishvara only. This is called as Bhavanotkarsha. Utkarsha meaning its culmination, summit, reaching its summit. Two things were told to us yesterday, and two definitions of Bhavanotkarsha and Bhavana Mandhyam were told. Bhavanotkarsha meaning Manushyatva Vismriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapattihi Bhavanotkarshaha. Without any trace that I am some, calling oneself as human being, because the meaning of I is not human being or anything. The meaning of I is consciousness. Even assuming that I am a human being is deep entrenchment into identity or identification with the Vyashti, Sthula Deha, and this is called as the Deha Buddhi. Okay, this is called as Deha Buddhi. So I is recognized, is seen as Ishvara or Vaishvanara or Hiranyagarbha. There, without any even without a memory that I am Manushya. So Manushyatva Vismriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti. Attainment of that state is called as Bhavanotkarsha. Then what can be called as Mandata, falling a short fall to this Utkarsha, to this summit, like the water at 99 degrees or even lesser. Water may be hot, but it cannot be called as boiling water. Like that, what is there which can be now said as to be the mandata of bhavana? Mandata meaning I hope that you people are at least those who know the Indian languages, and this is a word which is very common. Manda, slow, less, less intense. What is that shortfall in the intensity where it can because of which it cannot be called as boiling at 100 degrees? Mhm. What is that shortfall? He said, Ishan. Ishan means very little. Ishan Manushyatva Smarana Purvakam Tadbhavapatti. This upasaka, this seeker, this meditator is able to see this, that Aham Vaishvanaraha. Though he sees himself as Vaishvanara, yet Ishan Smriti, small little memory that I used to call myself as Manushya, or sometimes Manushya. Ishan, very little, even for a while. If this occurs, it is called as Mandata. Ishan Manushyatva Smriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti. What is Bhavana? Tad Bhavapatti is called as Bhavana. What is called as Utkarsha of that Bhavana? Manushyatva Vismriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti is called as Utkarsha. Utkarsha meaning its culmination, its highest degree. What would be then called as anything less than that highest? Manushyatva Smriti Purvakam. Ishan. Ishan. Ishatman. Ishan also is okay. But because there is the next word is Manushya, Makara. That's why that the Takara becomes Na. Ishan Manushyatva Smarana Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti Bhavana Mandyam. No, but depending upon, now, when you are going to say the water is not boiling, it also means, it could mean the water is at 99 degrees. It could mean the water is at 70 degrees. It could mean the water is at 50 degrees. Just that much sentence. The water is yet not at boiling temperature. It could mean anything, that it is at 50 degrees, it is at 80 degrees, it is at 90 degrees, it is at 99 degrees. Yet it all means it is not at the boiling temperature. Like that, there may be difference in the bhavana. Mandata can be there. And therefore, in that mandata, you have a spectrum. What do you have? A spectrum, a span. Similarly, if there is anything, so when you're saying 99 degrees and 80 degrees, 80 degrees is yet lesser than 90. When you're going to say it is 60, it is lesser than 80. When you're going to say 50, it is lesser than 60. So thus we find that there is some sort of um, uh, 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 what do they call, a ladder of ascent. Okay, ascent. You're ascending. It is an ascending order. Ascent. If there is Ishan Manushyatva Smriti, very little, for a little while, or it may be just very faint. In this case, what would happen? And if this is how the upasaka, the meditator lives, then he will attain Sarshti Mukti. Now, Sarshti Sayuchya is the same thing. It is accepted. Puranas use the word Sayuchya also, but sometimes the word Sayuchya is used even for Kaivalya Moksha. And this is still, we are at what point? Upasana. This is yet not moksha of the knowledge. Okay, remember this. This is moksha. This is still close to it. Over there, sarshti or sayujya moksha. What happens when there is very little memory of manushyatva, but there is tad bhavapatti? He says, where is that gone? परमेश्वरेण समान ऐश्वर्य भोगवत्वं साष्टी जगद व्यापार वर्जम. Now he discovers himself to be Ishvara, and this is, he has the same splendor, because the splendor of Ishvara, the splendor, the opulence, the Vaibhava, huh, is now getting expressed. That is called as Sarshti. He need not create the world because the world is already created. The world is already created. So Jagat Vyapara Varsham. Taduktam Jagat Vyapara Varsham Prakaranad Asannihitatvat Cheti. There is this the Brahma Sutra he has brought. You know, it would have had been even more intense discussion if we were to really enter into every sutra and every shruti that he is quoting, because these are pramanas. Maybe you can do this as a homework later on, that actually look at these sutras and the bhashyam over there and then be clear. Okay. Now, samana, then if it is, the water is not at 90 degrees, let us say at 80 degrees. Similarly, if the meditation where manushyatva, smriti is there, but the smriti is also there in very some little degree. And that degree is more than the degree of the earlier one. So mandata is more. In that case, the moksha or the mukti which is attained is called as sarupyam. Then one he may not have the all the aishwarya of Ishvara, but he can be seen that upasaka is seen with the same qualities of Ishvara, sarupyam. Okay, sarupyam. That is the reason why it is said in case of Bharatji and Bhagwan Ram, Bharat was as if his reflection in the mirror, the same complexion, the same face, the same, if all the features were also the same. Sarupyam. So Bharata represents this Sarupya Mukti. Samana Rupatvam Sarupyam. Samipavartitvam Samipyam. It does happen, and remember that as intensely this meditation becomes, as the meditation progresses to become intense, and if he is meditating on his Ishta Devata, that is how the person starts looking also. Even his features also will start reflecting that. Then there is Samipyam, Samipavartitvam, Samipyam. Now this person knows and he experiences his closeness to Ishvara. What does he experience? Closeness to Ishvara. That is called as Samipyam. But this will happen when there is more degree of mandata, more degree of mandata. And what is mandata? The Manushyatva Smaranam is more than the before. Then this brings some Samipya Moksha or Samipya Mukti. Then when the Manushyatva is there, that I am a seeker meditating on Ishvara, I know I can see Ishvara. Over there, this is called as Salokyam. Salokyam. And at this point, the seeker is going to say, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I can see the end of the tunnel. I know there is light. I know there is Ishvara. But between me and that light, there seems to be some distance, which can be covered. So this is called as Salokya Mukti. So this answers the question as what would happen if the seeker is not able to reach the boiling point of meditation, if he is not able to reach the Utkarsha. And remember what is Utkarsha? Manushyatva Vismriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti. What is Utkarsha? Manushyatva Vismriti Purvakam Tad Bhavapatti. Further now we have seen this, and I spent even a big chunk of today's time on what we have already done was only for the benefit of some students who weren't able to hear this because of the bad network now. Samnaha sayujyam salokatam chayati ityadi shrutehe. Is that a figment of your imagination where you are saying that there are these degrees which bring you closer to liberation? No, this is not our figment of imagination. Why? Because this is what the Shruti shows. This is what the Shruti shows. How does the Shruti allow you to know this? Here it is. This is the direct Shruti. Samnaha sayucham salokatam chayati. Now you know, in this particular publication and their edition, that wherever the Shrutis and the Brahma Sutra or the other quotations are brought, there, from where it is, etc., the number and reference is not given. It would have been nice if the reference was also mentioned. Maybe this work can be done by us later on if people want to do it. Actually, mentioning everything. Samnaha, now let us go to this. Samnaha pranasya sayujyam tada. Sayujyam means, what is samnaha? It means pranasya sayujyam tadatmyam tad bhava pattim ityarthaha. Samnaha. The word, he explains the word samnaha. What is samnaha? The experience of oneness. Pranasya sayujyam tadatmyam. Tadatmyam. Now, even this word also you should be able to recall. Tadatmyam. Bhinnatve sati abhinnatvam. Otherwise, bheda sahishnu abhedaha. Tadatmyam tadbhavapatti. Now, when there is this oneness, but how is this oneness? With Ishan Manushyatva Smriti Purvakam. So there is some mandata to it. Nacha Anyasya Anyabhavapattihi. Now he says, if it is a pot, it cannot be recognized as a cloth. If you are going to say, if you are going to call the pot as a cloth, then this is an error. Like the error of calling the rope as snake, because it is an error. Pot is pot, cloth is cloth. I am the individual ego. How can I be called as Ishvara? No, there is nothing wrong. Yes, it is true. Anyasya anyabhavapatti katham virodhat iti na vacham. Anyasya anyabhavapatti katham. How can that be there? Because this is totally, both of them, the pot is not a cloth, the cloth is not a pot. So also I am a human being. How can I be Ishvara? And therefore, how can that be said? Katham, no, iti na vacham. Don't even raise this kind of a question, because this question doesn't stand. Why, sir? Because samashti कारणनामेव परिच्छेदाभिमानेन. Karananam, Karananam is correct. अभिमानेन व्यष्टित्वप्राप्तिः इति परिच्छिन्नोपासनया परिच्छेदाभिमाननिवृत्त्या व्यष्टित्वनिवृत्तिसम्भवेन तद्भावापत्तेः अविरोधात् उपासकस्य upakasya. Now there is the word sa is missing. The letter sa add to that. Upasakasya. Have you found it on page number 110? Upasakasya. There is nothing wrong in recognizing that the part is not independent, not apart, is integral to the whole. And therefore that I which is identified, the self which is identifying itself as the whole, is nothing wrong. There is, and it cannot be even called as something unnatural or anything. It is perfectly in place. So what is parichinnabhimana? That just taking this, identifying this I, the I does not get identified. The identification happens in the antakaranam, in the mind itself. So the confusion is in the mind, and the confusion needs to be cleared in the mind. So it is not that the chaitanyam, the consciousness is getting out. The consciousness willingly identifies with the jadam. Oh no, don't be silly. The consciousness is consciousness. Consciousness ever remains shuddha, always. Identifying the consciousness as all these things is what is happening in the intelligence, in the buddhi, and that is what needs to be corrected in the antakaranam, and that is what we are correcting. So samashti समष्टिकरणानामेव परिच्छेदाभिमानेन व्यष्टित्वप्राप्तिः. What is called as Vyashtitva? That just taking a part of the totality and getting identified with it is what is called as individuality. There is nothing like individuality otherwise. Just identifying with a part. But that which is being identified with the part is the self, which is the builder of totality. And therefore, when the self is really recognized as the builder of totality, as the very support of this totality, and therefore when this with the conditioning of the totality, this I is recognized as Ishvara, it is not an error. It is not an error. So therefore, when the upasana is done, ahame vaishwanaraha, all this, the wind that is flowing, the water that is falling, the sun that is rising, is everything is in me, and this is how I am expressing through all this gross world. When this is what is meditated upon, it is nothing wrong. In fact, it is claiming what you are. Therefore, this is fine, this is perfect. Upasakasya tadbhavapattehe avirodhat upasakasya sambhavena. Now, Vyashtitva Nivritti also takes place, even immersion of the idea that I am an individuality also can take place. Imameva artham shrutiraha. This is what the Shruti says. Devo bhutva devanapyeti. So the person thus becoming the God attains God. Shivo bhutva shivam yajet. Actually, this is how it is said. How should you worship Shiva? By becoming Shiva. How is Shiva worshipped? By becoming Shiva. This is the way of worship. Shivo bhutva shivam yaje. Devo bhutva devanapyeti. Tadrisham phalam bhavanotkarshena bhavati. And the phalam, sarshti, etc. is attained by the utkarsha, by the meditation reaching its fullest capacity. Tan mandye purvoktameva bhavati. Now, in case if there is anything less than that 99 degrees, then what is the result? Does he miss the liberation? No, sir. He still will progress further. But that further progress will be not sarshti mukti or sayujya mukti, but it will be sarupata, samipata, or salokata kind of mukti. Okay, that means that upasaka is not going to fall into the trap of samsara. He still will be liberated. So he will make his progress on the path of liberation. And that is the reason why there are some great saints and sages who, right since the birth, will display this disposition. Why? Because they already have done their sadhana in their earlier lives. That's why if Ramana Maharshi goes and sits in a cave just like that, and then so people think that going and sitting in a cave is what will make it. Hey, you do not know from where Ramana Maharshi already had come. Don't think that he simply came from Madurai and went and sat in Tirumala. What do they call it? Tiruvannamalai. Don't be silly. Tadrisham phalam bhavanotkarshena bhavati tanmandye purvoktameva bhavati iti darshayati salokatamiti. Adi shabdena etasam devatanam sayujyam sarshtitam samanalokatam yanti ityadi shtayo grihyante. Now there seems to be some little difference between sarshti and sayujya also. Because the Shruti mentions them in one sentence as two different. Look at that. Etasam devatanam sayujyam sarshtitam samanalokatam yanti iti. There is some difference. Salokyadi phalabedha puraneshu sputaha. Now, these, the degrees of liberation, which is the result of this upasana, stages of liberation, are brought to us more clearly. Sputam, it is made sputa by the Purana, the literature of Puranas. Puraneshu sputaha. Evam sagunopasakanam tatpadavachyartha nirupana prasangena tattad upasanaya tattad prapti phalam uktva Upasana prasangena sarvato viraktanam mandaprashyanam vicharakshamanam brahmajinyasunam nirgunobas brahmopasanaya tat sakshatkaradvara ikshati karma vyapadeshats iti nyayena maniprabhayam manibuddhya pravrittasya manipraptivat nirguna brahma praptim darshayati ye punaha iti. Now, up to this point, we have seen what is saguna upasana. We have seen what is saguna upasana, the meditation on Paramatma with attributes. Paramatma with attributes is meditated upon. And this is what is its phalam. Now, those who meditate upon Ishvara, on Paramatma, as the one without any attributes, what happens to them? But why are they meditating upon the Nirguna Brahma when Nirguna Brahma has to be known? Why are they simply doing the Upasana? Because it is Jnaya Brahma, this is Dheya Brahma. Why are they doing that? Now, this is a topic, and it is also a very important topic because these are the things which are necessary in the sadhana, in your spiritual practice. Now, this makes it very clear that how important is the practice of meditation. Okay, we will see more of it as we will progress into the next pages, and I think we should be able to complete as much. Another 16 pages more to go for this first chapter to finish. We have 15 more days. Hopefully, we are able to do that. Om Brahmaham Yat Prasadena Mai Vishwam Prakalpitam Srimad Swayam Prakashaksham Pranami Jagatam Gurum Yah Paramatma Jagat Srishtva Pravivesha Punaswayam Tam Krishnam Pratyagatmanam Vande Gopi Manoharam Yasya prasadadhamadvayatma Vishwam Samastam Mayi Kalpitancha Tan Sarvalokaika Gurum Sadashri Swayam Prakasham Gurmanatosmi Gurunam Charanam Pojam Pranipatya Nirantaram Tatkripa Leshato Dvaita Chinta Kaustu Kumarake Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnahat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate Om Shanti 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 Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashyakrito Vande Bhagavanto Punah Punah Ishvaro Gururatmeti Murti Bheda Vibhagine Vyomavadvyaptadehaaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Om. Thank you all. Thank you very much.